This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
It's magical, and that's what gives us the ability and the energy to get through this moment, which is really, really hard to lift and drop an event with 8 weeks to go. To be able to have people come and experience it and say, this is really big. This is really fun.
Guys, the wait is finally over. We're talking about 100 countries, 200 clubs, 2,000 players, 24 games. And this is not one tournament we're talking about. We're not talking about the World Cup, which is happening right now. We're talking about the Esports World Cup, which, as I'm learning, and my guest, Mike, you're going to know I'm learning as we go here, and I'm floored by what you all are doing. It's 25 tournaments in one with a $75 million pool prize. And you guys have had to be, we kind of even talked about this, somewhere between courageous and resilient, because there's been a pivot, and we're now moving to Paris. And the World Cup we're talking about is the Esports World Cup, happening July 6th through August 23rd, 7-week tournament happening here. And by the way, if you're into Call of Duty, chess, Rocket League, Fortnite, maybe you guys can hire me as a hype person here, Mike. I mean, we're going on and on with it, but super excited to hear more from you. And my guest today, Mike McCabe, COO and Deputy CEO of the Esports World Cup Foundation. Thanks for joining me, man. Congrats.
Oh, it's a huge pleasure. And talk about hype. I mean, look, you've got the facts dialed there. That's impressive. You got them all nailed. Yeah, you've got us covered.
Well, hey, it sounds like it's been a wild month, and I mean, more than a month. And just part of this reminds me, my favorite quote of all time is an Arthur Schopenhauer quote, that's all truth passes through 3 phases. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. Third, it's deemed self-evident. And in some ways, the creation of what you're doing, it's like, well, yeah, like, really? Like, yeah, we're all playing games. We're all playing esports. It seems like it was only a matter of time, but you guys figured out a way to like bring it all together. So let's start there. Like, when did you start on this journey? And when did you go, oh my goodness, this is not a small idea. There's something here. You're boiling the ocean, basically. Like, that's actually what you're doing. When did you get involved? And like, give me moments of progress for you in this journey.
Well, from a gaming perspective, I played games my whole life, from being a tiny kid and sitting next to my brother on those first generation of computers where we'd be copying code out the back of a magazine for 2 days to have the most basic of games, all the way through trying to find a way that video games could be a career, and doing a bunch of different things. Like most people in our industry, we're passionate about gaming and we're passionate about the platform, but sometimes it's hard to find your way in. And so I finally managed to get involved in the industry properly in the mid-2000s. And that was when that first moment of esports really happened, and it all drove out of Korea. And people playing games, and the idea of going to watch somebody else play a game was just something that I didn't understand until I went there and I saw the passion, just the same as at any sport. When you go and watch somebody play a sport and you see the spectators losing their minds. And so it's really been a journey from 2005, from my first moment of watching esports in Seoul, to Esports World Cup, to where we are now.
I mean, would you say 20 years happened in a blink? Like, can you believe it's been 21 years since that moment? And you're like, I'm sure there's so much to do, but you've done so much already. And I'm with you. Like, I grew up on, I'm not sure if you could say it, but I can. Like, I grew up on like a Nintendo Power, and like racing to the back of that thing to find the cheat codes, right? And like, oh, that's how you do it. And And the amount of time I spent dreaming actually like that I was the one winning the World Cup, or, I'm dating myself, but like taking on Mike Tyson's and Mike Tyson's Punch Out or whatever. Like that's how it started for me. And now I think people misunderstand this is not video games. Like this is a massive opportunity where the stakes have really been raised, and curious of like, is it where you already thought it would be? And if we took a time machine ride 20 years into the future, what do you expect from this vertical?
Look, I think we're pretty much at a starting line, always. And yeah, the 20 years have gone in the blink of an eye. But I think what we've seen over the course of the last few years is really an evolution, a step change in really competitive esports players, them being able to build a sustainable career, and esports being sustainable. And that's something that I've worked before this role. I worked within publisher ecosystem, so working for amazing companies like EA and Epic, and they had their own ecosystem with their own first-party IP. So if people were playing EAFC or Apex Legends, or within the Epic universe, Rocket League and Fortnite, then people were playing, but it was within that company's ecosystem. And I think what we've really tried to do, and with the creation of the Esports Foundation, is really to put ourselves in a position to be able to help with that long-term sustainability for the organizations who are competing, the players who are there, and really to support the publishers as well. Because it's hard for that one publisher to really invest in esports at scale. But because, like you said, we've got 24 different games involved in the Esports World Cup, and then over 16 in the Esports Nations Cup as well, then we're able to provide that longer term support for the esports ecosystem as a whole.
So if we take this time machine ride 20 years in the future, tell me, like, just humor me for a minute. Like, are we in stadiums? Do you allow an AI player? Do you like is my agent going to be winning this thing on behalf of me? I mean, again, let's dream a little bit. Where do you think this thing goes?
Well, the stadiums are already there. I went to an event in Beijing last year, and it was the Honor of Kings final. And it was in, remember the Beijing Olympics and the Bird's Nest Stadium? It was in there, and it was full. And so they had 70,000 people. I think it was close to 70,000 people, because they weren't able to quite use the ends of the stadium. But one half of the stadium was supporting one team, and the other half was supporting the other team. And it was incredible. So the stadium piece is already there. And that's something that we're really excited with this move to Paris, because we're able to, take some bigger venues and be able to bring these games to more and more people. So I think that is there. What's really interesting is the games and the longevity of those games. And what I'd be interested in is, what are we playing in 20 years? And which of the games that we play at the moment are still going to be there in 20 years time? Chess, yeah, 100%. It's already been with us for a lot longer than that.
Yeah, EA, I think I'm curious if EA feels like EA Sports, so FC will be there as well. I'm like, soccer seems to be the beautiful game, right? And let's walk through that one in specifically, because I think if I got this right, 36 will actually qualify this year to play. Yes.
Yeah. So actually more. We've got more for EAFC, more people, because it's a single player game. So we open that up massively. And in addition to the main qualification process that we run through with EA in partnership with the game, we also have last chance qualifiers. And this is the bit that I really love, because we create this opportunity for players to roll up the week before the tournament kicks off and compete to get wildcard slots. Can you imagine that in any other sport, where you literally, it's in your hometown, you can rock up or you can fly in for it? And the last couple of years, we've had teams that have qualified through that last chance qualifier that have actually walked away with $1 million from winning a competition, which is, the stuff of fairy tales.
So you had mentioned this move to Paris. I mean, we were supposed to be in Riyadh, and you've had to like figure this out on the spot. And maybe you can give the listener who probably knows about esports like I did going in, although I got the facts right. Why the move, and what did you learn about your organization by pulling this off, so to speak?
Yeah, well, obviously it's been a pretty turbulent few months here in the Middle East. We've had a lot of disruption, and we've been monitoring it. And as with any organization, we always have contingencies. We always know that things might go a different way, and we need to build a plan for it. But often you hope that you're not going to have to trigger those contingency plans. What became clear to us was that the travel disruption and the travel advisories were going to probably still be in effect at a time where players are starting to plan their travel and be able to come here to Riyadh. And so we sat down with our stakeholders and we had a conversation and said, look, we've got a date where we'd have to pull the trigger, and we would have to go to a broadcast only event. And we didn't really want to take the event away from the fans from a physical spectator standpoint. So we actually pulled it forward, and we made the decision a little bit earlier, so we could still then build arenas out that would enable fans to come and support their clubs, and it wouldn't just be a broadcasting. But what was in the core of this was, for us, was we couldn't cancel because the clubs, and I talked a little bit earlier on about that sustainability, the clubs really rely on this opportunity. The prize money's a really important beat on their annual calendar. And we'd made commitments to the publishers as well that we didn't want to jeopardize the relationships that we built up there. So based on what we thought was going to be the case, and here we are, and there is still travel disruption. So we made the decision early to make the move somewhere else. So we made the decision actually 8 weeks out from the event, which
Wild.
It seemed okay at the time, but it seems crazier now that we're a few weeks into that window. And it wasn't just moving the event. We had to completely redesign everything. We had to completely build different stage structures. We had to build different ticketing pathways. We had to create visa pathways for the players to be able to get from all over the world into France, completely different country, completely different rules. So it's been, he talked about, is it courageous? I think it's courageous squared for us on this one, because we've really had to pull everybody together. And to your question about what I've learned about the team is they just never cease to amaze me how they pull together, and they've all dropped a shoulder and they've all leaned in. But it goes beyond our team here, because it's our partners, it's the publishers, it's the French government, it's our stakeholders. Everybody's really pulled together, because it can only happen with that, that really broad support.
I have to imagine this is one of those moments too, that when you look back on it all, you can't help but just remember this moment, right? And obviously it's coming out of an awful, right, moment of war. But it's forcing these muscles that you may or may not have known you had. And you look back on that in the rocking chair with brown drink, maybe, at least that's how I would do it, and go like, wow, can you believe we pulled that off? And what exactly did we learn about ourselves? Our world of courageous, one of the things we talk about is the fallacy of a lot of companies. They talk about reducing friction. We're going to make it easier. And I think we see ourselves as, we actually want to produce friction. Well, we want to be an easy partner to work with, but we want to bring the hardest thing to the forefront and just power through it. And we don't want to lie about that reality. And again, here you are learning as you're going through it. Like, how do you put on a world-class tournament and 8 weeks away? Imagine now you kind of have this traveling roadshow that you could take. And I imagine you're looking at it that way. Like, what becomes the new best practice if you took this back to Beijing or the US? And I'm curious, is that part? I mean, obviously, we got to stay locked in on kind of a big tournament coming up here, but is that part of the plan? It's like, how do we take this show on the road?
It's so funny. It's like you got my office bugged because we were talking about this today of like, where do we go from here? Because exactly as you say, I mean, yeah, we talk about reducing friction, and look, we're always trying to make it easier to achieve more. There's no question about it. But we also look at, this is what we can achieve. What more can we achieve? It's that kind of performance mindset of being able to think, well, wow, I didn't think that was possible. Now I know that's possible. Where can we go from there? And so it's not necessarily about, where do we go geographically from here? It's like what can we, from a product and from an experience, what can we do to really amp it up and again from this point? And so it is funny. I've not necessarily had that conversation broadly yet, because the team, like, we're totally focused on what we need to deliver. But that's already starting to creep into people's minds as to what more can we do? And I think that's just an indication of a really strong team. They're not pushing back and saying, no, we're running in the other direction. It's really embracing it.
Yeah, it forces you to go, now what, or what if? And I think when you get known for throwing, I've seen this all the time, one tournament, you could get caught in the rut of just rinse and repeat. And already here we are. What is this is year 3?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Year 3?
Yep. Year 3.
And you're already, right, you're already forced to think, not that you weren't being innovative anyway, but like, wow, the places we could go. How wild is that? Let's talk about the prize money. And it's not small. Like, this can change. Am I off on this? That it can change lives of the players and the families. Do you see it that way too? And is there like a story or two you could share where you've already seen that and it's like, this is just an amazing story?
Yeah, 100%. It's it's $75 million across the 25 different tournaments, and that's made up of prize money all the way from the LCQ, those last chance qualifiers, all the way up to winning the club championship. So it really funds everybody within the ecosystem. And then we also, on top of that, we have funding that we give to the clubs. So we have our own club program where we give additional funding we pick 40 clubs every year that we give more support to as well. So they can help build out their rosters. They can build more sustainability there as well. But it really does. I mean, look, I have one of the best jobs in the world because I get to give people these trophies and you can feel and see the emotion of what it means to people. And when you have teams that are coming from Southeast Asia or from other parts of the world where this money goes an incredible way to really make a huge change to their family's trajectory or their career trajectory. It's been amazing. What we loved is we could see this happening. We've always seen this happening in esports because often people are like, can I really make a career out of this? And then they start to win and they're able to actually, make this their day job. But we were seeing it happening. And this was one of the key elements that we wanted to bring into the documentary that we created as well, to really tell those stories, because it's hard to get those stories out of the endemic esports world into mainstream media, into my mum's life. And so there's the documentary that we created, Level Up, and we did one season last year. We're launching the next one this year, June 26th. And that really goes behind the scenes and tells these stories, and it gives you the format, that long form format, where you can really tell those stories. And I loved it because my mum watched it. And I remember her calling me up and saying, "Oh, I just watched your documentary." And I was like, "What? I didn't even tell you about about this, and she said, "Yeah, I was crying, and Dad was crying, but he won't admit it." About one of the particular, I don't want to give any spoilers away if people haven't watched it, but there was one particular story arc in that first season where, exactly as you described, it was this moment where somebody won a life-changing amount of prize money, and that's one of our pillars, is life-changing prizes. And that's something that we really want to stand by, is continuing to be able to create those moments for people.
Can you share any, and I don't know how many pillars you have. What are some of the other pillars, if you don't mind?
Oh, the best games. And so we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, and that was something that was critical for us when we were creating the Esports World Cup, was to have that legitimacy. You have to have the biggest games in the world. And so those 24 games represent the biggest 24 games in esports at the moment. And the best players and the best clubs. And within that kind of trifecta, you've got all of those components, because you're representing the best players, you're representing the best publishers, and we've got something that really is going to help drive incredible change within the community.
I'm just so fascinated by the timeline of events. So this is my own curiosity. Which came first, the prize money or the getting the games on board? Because I'm sure the players are like, you want to pay me to play games? I'm in, right? I'm sure it was hard, but this is a Saudi-backed venture. Did you start there, or because of your EA background, did you start with the games? Give me a little bit of like chicken egg. Which came first here?
It really has to start with the games. And so without the games, there's no competition. And so it was clear, and Ralph, who's our CEO, has been in the industry his entire career as well. And he's always been, building these events, operating these events. So he has incredible credibility within the community. I've always worked in the publisher world. And so there's an element of trust that's there, but we need the games, because without the games, we've got nothing. And the community and the players would come if we didn't give them the opportunity to compete with the biggest games, and the fans wouldn't come either. So that's kind of really where it started. But as we wanted to make it really meaningful for both the publishers, where we demonstrated not just a prize money investment, but the quality of the tournament that we want to put on. We want to put on the best tournament in the world, the highest quality of production, the biggest broadcast reach, which helps them really grow the reach of their games, and hopefully helps them with the sustainability or the acquisition of new players, or the re-engagement of players as well. So I think games right at the center, but then everything else then follows really quickly afterwards.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall a decade ago. Like, did brands get it then? Do they get it now? Who saw it? Who didn't get it? Are you still do you still navigate that world a little bit, or no?
Yeah, it wasn't that brands didn't get it. I think, as well as anybody, how media's evolved over the course of about last 10 years, and how, linear was a primary focus, and it's evolved massively in the last 10 years to be much more diversified when it comes to the mediums that those brands are approaching. But I think it was fragmented, and that's what was hard, because if you're a big brand and you're looking at, okay, we want to make a play in esports, you're then picking a singular game. And with that singular game, you've got a singular audience, and there may be a little bit of crossover, but it's hard. And what hadn't really existed was this idea of multi-platform or a multi-game experience at the scale that we've been able to develop the Esports World Cup, which gives them a much more logical canvas to be able to put that on. And that's what, we've worked really hard, and to bring in amazing global partners as well, that maybe hadn't been involved with with gaming in the same way. You know, a partner like Hilton, for example, Hilton Hotels, they'd never really been involved with games and with esports, but they've joined us, and they've been an incredible partner, as well as many other partners that are close to the technology world. You know, the Sony, Lenovo, and others, and we have amazing partners here in Saudi Arabia as well, as you would imagine. Yeah.
I'd like to ask Hilton to put me up in Paris right around the time of the tournament start, because I mean the energy there is going to be bonkers, right? I mean, obviously here in the States, the NBA will be beyond us, but the Wemby mania is real here too, right? And my guess is that Mbappe will be doing something pretty special at the time of the tournament starts. It's like, I as you were planning, well, where are we going city-wise? I'm sure you talked about we're going to be competing a little bit with the energy of the World Cup going on. If you had a pros and cons list, what was like the one watch out about that, but also the one like, oh, this is actually a double win. Here's why.
Yeah, I think the watch out was definitely scheduling. And so obviously the FIFA World Cup was planned before we made this move. But look, we knew earlier, as soon as the match schedule was released, then we started looking at our game schedule. And you know, when we'll position an opening ceremony, when we'll do different things. And I think, look, it was a watch out, but not a huge one, because the time zone for us here in the Middle East, or even for Europe, because they're only 1 hour different from us, the games start really late for us here. And so I think the majority of them are 11 or 2 a.m., 11 p.m. or 2 a.m. And so we're going to have a lot of late nights, and we're finishing our events before that. So that was the watch out, but it wasn't a huge one. As for the opportunity, I think there's a party atmosphere around the world, and that's going to continue. And the idea that we can, in some cases, even create watch party opportunities, we can tie in with some of those fan fest areas as well, because the infrastructure is already going to be there. How can we potentially do things in partnership with the city? And it'll be interesting. Like, who knows how far France will get in the tournament. Obviously, dream come true if we're in Paris and France win. It'll hurt me a little bit as a Brit. But look, we'll see.
I'm tracking. I have high hopes for your boys here. I really do. I want to stay focused on the topic, but I did hear that Mr. Kane's dog is named after Tom Brady, which means he might have good energy for playing here in the States. But we'll move beyond that. You know, you had mentioned at the top that I knew enough to be dangerous on the hype machine with the statistics. I may or may not be getting these right, and so keep me honest on these. Like, I think I had read 3 million 3 million fans on the ground during the tournament, and up to 750 million viewers. Is that accurate? Give me like the streaming numbers. Like what are the projections?
Yeah, so I can't talk about the projections for this year because we're still building those out. If I'm entirely honest, because there's been some changes with
Mike. What has the team been doing? What's the team been doing?
I know, slacking clearly. But last year, you're right. We had over 750 million viewers over the course of the 7 weeks, which is incredible. And within the facilities that we had, the venues that we had here in Riyadh, there was over 3 million people visiting the various parts of that. But when we added all of that, of those 750 million viewers, it equated to over 350 million hours watched across the tournament, which it's incredible. I mean, it's
wild.
It's a monumental amount, and what we're really investing time and effort in is, how do we take from that core esports endemic audience, the people who really love watching competitive esports, how do we then chunk that out into the broader gaming audience? And that's where it starts to get really exciting, because there's over 3.5 billion people who play games on this planet, and 1.5 billion of those are what we call core gamers, the people who would be playing the kind of games that we have within the tournament. So we've got upside in the people that we can reach, and that's where we want to create new content mediums. We want to be able to create new ways to engage, new ways to play, and bring new people into the structure. And so last year we had Nick Kyrgios Cup, Lando Norris came as well, and these are tier 1 athletes in their respective sports, tennis and Formula One, but they're also passionate players of video games, and they want to play. I mean, we had Nick Kyrgios playing against the Call of Duty pros and getting tips, and to the point that he wants to throw down with them again. And Lando, playing Rocket League, and he's a big PUBG fan as well. They want to play, and so they bring with them a different audience who, really follow them as a Formula One driver, a world champion Formula One driver, or an incredible tennis player like Nick, and they bring those audiences into this new world.
I feel like I've seen this story only once before like this. Like, I think when the World Series of Poker launched here, and in the US, like, it was like these amateurs who were joining in. They won your wild card. What would you call it? They won and the next thing you know, everybody thinks that they can go do it, and it's become, as a brand guy, I love brands, but like a traditional mainstream thing here. And I think when you think about traditional sports, as a brand idea, traditional sports, this does not feel like an emerging sport anymore. It feels like we're on the brinks of traditional, which is a funny word to use for something as emerging as it is. Like, you are on the cusp of, you're already there. Do you see it that way? Like, this is why I'm so fascinated about like what the future of this thing looks like. And I can't help myself, Mike. Like, I've never seen myself I don't see myself as a business guy, and I don't see myself as a creative. I'm a creative business guy. And so, like, oh my gosh, the e-sport, like from the Olympics, like, what can we learn from the Olympics? And when is it going to be, USA versus China versus Italy? I'm sure you're already thinking about all of this stuff, or already putting this on. Is it just like a great time now to be where you are? Like, would you trade places with anybody, any other brand or sports group?
No, it's great. And I've lived in both worlds. So I had a lot of time in that video game world, but I took 4 years out in the middle to go to Nike, because as a brand, I'd always admired it. And I'd always been that consumer, watching those amazing brand pieces that Nike did and continue to do with their amazing World Cup piece. And so I just wanted to know how that machine worked, because I'd always kind of worked in tech, and this was always fascinating for me. And so I went there and ran their digital product and digital innovation teams there, which was fascinating. So having that proximity to, as you say, traditional athletes, but bringing technology in to bring engagement was a new part, and bringing the world of video games, of how we build engagement into activity to help people be more active in a new way. And so it's really interesting, because you then talk about where we are from an Esports World Cup standpoint, or an Esports Foundation standpoint. And there's so little daylight between those worlds now. You mentioned that the US versus Italy. We have that tournament is going in November. So we started with the clubs. So we started with the Esports World Cup as being a club-based tournament. But then the Esports Nations Cup that we will run for the first time in November is exactly that, because that is a jumping point, and that ecosystem didn't really exist. So we had to start with the clubs, but we know that the next step into a broader audience is going to be through tapping into exactly what you described, that national pride where people are supporting their country, their territory, of being able to compete. Because we see that with the Olympic model, and we'd worked with the IOC to, move it in that direction. We decided to go first with it, so we'll launch the Esports Nations Cup in November, and that's a new, completely new ground for us. So yeah, we didn't just make it challenging for ourselves this year, but with the move, but we decided, no, let's do 2 instead of 1 events this year.
Will that be in Riyadh? Where will that be?
Yeah, that is going to be in Riyadh, basically for the duration of November. So we're running that one for 4 weeks, and we've got 16 different tournaments across that. But with that one, we had to build the nation-based ecosystem, because it exists in the world of football or basketball. There's those, global federations exist, but it doesn't exist in the same way for esports. And so we've had to basically create that from the ground up, and tap into some markets where they're very mature, and some markets where they're just starting out, and be able to support it. So yeah, you'll be able to come to Riyadh and watch the USA esports team compete against Team GB in that tournament.
We'll have a little side bet on that, although you have way more insider information than me. But I like where your head's at. I kind of want to go back to, like I said, this traditional sports brand, right, as an idea, because I'm sure there's a BHAG, right? There's got to be this big, hairy, audacious goal of where you want to take it. And is it to become a traditional sport brand? Because when you think about traditional sport brands, they've got teams and cities and rituals and mascots and bars and chants and parents, and it's like, its fandom is wild. Like, will there be esports bars in different cities that just love their team? Like, is the BHAG though to become a traditional sport, or does that take the focus off? Like, let's just stay locked in on doing what we do best.
I don't think it's to get to be a traditional sport. I think traditional sport is where it is, and it's in some cases taken more than 100 years to get to that point. I think we have a different, it'll be a different destination, but it'll have some or many common elements between that. You mentioned fandom, you mentioned people, the infrastructure where people are starting playing young, and then there's pathways for them to basically get to be a professional athlete. That already exists, but there's some differences. The clubs themselves, whereas a traditional sporting club has kind of been, like you say, tied to a city or tied to a geography, or it's got an element of that geographic connection. Whereas what we've seen with the esports clubs is that they cross borders. So because they have representatives or rosters from different games, they may be based in China, but they've got teams coming from South America, coming from Europe as well. So they end up with more of a global following. I guess the same way as a football club or a soccer club has got following around the world, but they're based to a city. It's just a slightly different approach. But I think the core center of this is still going to be around fandom, and it's still going to be around those athletes being superstars. And for us, our goal is to make esports a global sport. But I think what that definition of a global sport is still a story that needs to be written. We've started and we've got a few chapters under our belt, but I think where it ultimately ends up is what excites me, because I think we don't know yet. And that's what's going to be really exciting, is this journey over the next few years as it evolves.
I'm just thinking about the 350 million hours watched, and I'm just thinking about the production needs of a live like event like this. I mean, is it being translated in dozens of languages, and like who's doing that? And are they all live commentators? Like, give me like bring some of the pain to the podcast. Like what's like what is like how like give me a little behind the scenes on what the production conversations look like.
Yeah. So on site, we have multi-language broadcast galleries where we've basically got, and this is not the same. So we were talking a little bit about the World Cup that's running at the moment, and it's the same sport in every stadium, and so everybody knows how to follow football, and the camera operators know how to do this. That the person who's choosing which camera to switch to, like it's a dumb one. But we've got 24 different games that have 24 different skill sets as to how to say this is where we should focus on the action at the moment. So that's the first layer of complexity. And then we've got the ability to broadcast in multiple core languages. So we have English, Chinese, and Arabic that we basically do full like broadcast across the board in those languages. But then you mentioned all of the different countries around the world that people are consuming content. And they might be consuming it on linear platforms, on Twitch or YouTube or in other streaming platforms. And so what we have is an army of influencers and creators who are around the world who are passionate about that game in that language, in their country, with their audience. And so that's what's different about our broadcast model, is we go all the way from a traditional linear model in certain places with certain partners, all the way through to somebody who's casting in Venezuela to their audience, or in New Zealand or in Japan. It's incredible, and so that then gives us the ability to take the content really around the world. And we'll give those creator partners, they basically get that live feed, and then they're just able to commentate over the top of it, and they're able to put their own flavor on it. And it gives us an incredible authenticity in those markets with their community specifically.
Yeah, I'm just fascinated by I'm thinking about what a mortem looks like. Like, what is when this tournament runs its course? I'm sure you're looking at, all right, what went well with the tournament? Where could we improve for future years? But I'll also imagine somebody is monitoring who did what with our content. Like, who's actually like looking at, oh, this is fascinating, what happened. I mean, you're just only monitoring the whole world of casting and streaming in a market. How do you go about like learning from all the things, whether it's to make a better tournament or, the residual effect of other people taking your content and doing what they do?
It's a lot of dialogue, a lot of talking with people all the way through the process. As we're going through the creation of the content, we're constantly learning from all of our partners as to what can we do better. But we're monitoring how the content is used real time as well, which is a hugely important part of the journey, because the tournament lasts for 7 weeks. We plan for 10 months. We run pretty much for 2 months. But in those 2 months, we're literally looking at it day by day, hour by hour, and constantly refining the product as we go through over the course of those 7 weeks. And it does evolve. The way that we're able to provide the content, the platforms that we're able to use to be able to give the support to those creators is it's a work in progress. I've got 100 ideas of things I want to be able to do. And we just have to throttle it and be able to prioritize like anybody does. You have your backlog and you bring things out of it and say, okay, this is worth the investment this time. We're going to do that for this year.
You know, I have an unfair advantage because I actually can talk to you, right? I'm like, so let's say you're my Esports World Cup concierge. I've hired you as my, like, where do I start? So tell me where I should go. How should I start the tournament? And then, like, be my tour guide. Where do I go next? If you were going to give me my first move, my second, and my third as a newbie, where should I go?
The first thing I would do would be to type in your search bar Esports World Cup and visit the web experience or download the app. And then you'll see the schedule and you'll see the games that you recognize and you'll see some ones that you don't recognize. And then you're going to pick your week that is like, okay, that week I'm in. They're my games, they're my people. And then you book a ticket and you come and see us in Paris and you get to experience it firsthand. And then you get to feel the infectious energy of the fans when you sit in there and you know, maybe if it's a game that you don't know too well, I guarantee that after half an hour, you know it because you understand, you know, the passion and the sound of the crowd, but it's everything that's around it. And that's what we wanted to create with this tournament over 7 weeks was to build a fan fest around it on a scale that doesn't exist elsewhere and a festival of gaming where we've got a whole host of other things that people are able to do and they're able to immerse themselves in it for that period of time. And that's the other half of the job is, yes, there's a huge competition with a huge prize pool, but there's all of the other elements that we need to create and the engagements and how we can activate a city. And we do that here. And obviously on home turf advantage in Riyadh, we know the city and we know what we can do. But this is what with Paris, it's a completely different canvas. And we know the Paris landmarks and it's like, okay, what can we do with the Eiffel Tower? What can we do with these incredible venues that exist in Paris? And that's where the government have been hugely helpful. They've really leaned in and said, okay, let's brainstorm on what we could do with the city and how do we really ignite an entire capital city towards this event. We want to create these activations that are around the city that will be points for people to go and celebrate. The idea that that's where I can go and see the players, my idols, if they've just won this incredible tournament. How do we create these moments? How can we create these iconic show matches with the best players in the world in an environment that you would never expect to see them? And these are the fun things that are great fun to create because we don't need a huge, beautiful grass pitch to be able to run an incredible show match. And so we have that freedom and flexibility within esports to be able to pretty much do it anywhere. And I've done events on trams. We've done events in other modes of transport where people are playing competitively against each other with varying degrees of success.
Well, congrats on everything you built, man. I know you're just getting started. You got the Esports World Cup coming up. And then in November, we got the Esports Nations Cup, which sounds like a massive new next chapter for you all. One last question, you know, we always talk about you can't get to courage without like going through fear. Like it's something else if you don't have like a little bit of, oh my gosh, this thing scares me. This thing is just terrifying me. And so, you know, give me, you had to make this pivot. It's not here yet, but it's coming close. Like, what is the one sort of keep you up at night moment that you're managing and you know you're going to be courageous through it? Is there one you could share? And yeah, only one that you could share. That's like the big one.
I think it's the things we don't know. And that's the if you ask me about the one thing, and I know I'm cheating by not giving you one, but it's honestly, that's the thing, because it's an environment that we've never operated in. And so we don't know what we don't know. And that's the one thing that honestly creates the biggest amount of concern, is have we missed something? Because we can do all the planning and we think we've got our house in order and we're pushing forward on all these fronts. But if there's one thing that can trip us up and really impact our ability to put on a show, that's something that makes me anxious. And that's where we're constantly turning over stones to make sure there's nothing underneath. And we have the fortune that we've run this a couple of years now. So we know how to put on the show, and we know the constituent parts, and we know that we can do that. But then there might be something that we miss. And so we're trying our best to just make sure that we don't find ourselves in a challenging position there.
Yeah. Just to use the sports metaphor, in some ways, you've only had a home game, right? You've only done this, and this is an away game. This is an away game until it isn't, right? And the goal is hopefully it feels like home a little bit, right? But that's a great answer, and it makes a ton of sense. Hey, you're a busy man. Congratulations. Good luck with everything. And I know my marching orders. I'm going to the website, and then I'm going to go book a ticket, and you're going to put me in touch with Hilton, and I can't wait to come see it live. And I have to imagine it must be gratifying when you see somebody like me get it, who didn't totally get it, and then you're there and you're like, oh wow, this is like, do you have that feeling all the time, or are you just so locked in? You do?
No, 100%. I last year, if I look, we all have a tough day occasionally, or sometimes more regularly than occasionally, but all I needed to do was just walk outside and just stand for a minute in the middle of the mayhem and just see people's faces. And so, yeah, it's magical. And that's what gives us the ability and the energy to get through this moment, which is really, really hard to lift and drop an event with 8 weeks to go. But to be able to have people come and experience it and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize it was this, because there's a preconception, and this is really big. This is really fun. And all of these emotions that people have never had. And so it's wonderful. And my gauge is always how many people write to me afterwards and say, I could come next year, can't I? You're going to invite me next year, aren't you? And so, yeah, it's infectious. And that's what fuels us to go forward and do the hard work.
2026 Esports World Cup is here, folks, in Paris, July 6th to August 23rd. Google it, book your ticket. Thanks, Mike McCabe. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.